Hey guys, Dr. Jim Stepani here. It is 3 o'clock here in, I won't say sunny Southern California because right now it is on the colder side here as far as Los Angeles goes. It's 60 degrees and rainy, and actually one of the few days out of the year that I can actually wear my gym hoodie. So I'm taking advantage of being able to wear that. Like I said, luckily there are not many cold, rainy days in Los Angeles, but today is one of those days, and actually for most of us who live here and see very few rain, we're very fortunate when it does rain because we are in the middle of a drought and we certainly could use the rain. But anyway, let's get into the questions that you guys have posted here for me. First one is coming from Ryan Quinn, and Ryan's question is about warm-ups. And Ryan says, are you planning on doing a set of videos in the future that describe how to warm up the different major muscle groups? I have a set of warm-ups that I do, but I'm always left wondering if I'm doing enough or not enough, or the proper kinds. Thanks as always. So for those of you who do have questions about proper warm-up, I really don't cover that in any real detail because, warming up it's fairly easy. There's no real right or wrong way to warm up. Well, let me go back and say there is a wrong way, and it does appear that based on the research and the research on stretching, this is going into the stretching debate. What the research shows is that static stretching, where you sit and reach or even bend over and you touch your toes and you hold the stretch, that can actually reduce muscle strength and power. So that can actually hinder performance. Particularly for those who are performing, for athletes who need to have explosive power or a lot of strength, which we actually need when we work out. There's actually been research showing that when people actually did static stretching before they ran, they were less efficient when they ran. So there is a bit of data that does sort of suggest that sort of typical stretching method that most people use, the old sit and reach type of static stretching where you actually hold the stretch, is actually bad. And that used to be the way that most trainers would recommend warming up, is to stretch before you work out because it prevents injury. There's also research that shows that stretching before exercise does not reduce injury whatsoever. In fact, there's data that suggests that if you save your static stretching for after the workout, that flexibility is actually increased better than when people stretch before the workout. So if you sort of take that data that's out there and look at stretching as far as what we mean by static stretching in this case, it would suggest that you should forego stretching before the workout and keep that for when the workout is over. It won't hinder muscle strength or power when you do it at the end of the workout. And it appears that because your body is so warmed up after the workout, you're more flexible when the body is warmer. And you've also fatigued a lot of the major muscle groups that you're stretching. When those muscles are fatigued, they're more relaxed, and you can stretch them further, which enhances your flexibility in the long run. But now, what do you do before? Then do you just forego all stretching? Do you just do a general warm-up? Well, a general warm-up tends to be a good idea. Some people like to walk or run on the treadmill, 5 or 10 minutes just to raise your core temperature. You could simply do HIIT, HIIT of some form if you want to do like a bout of Tabatas on something. That's a great way to do a general warm-up. But then Research also shows that when you do dynamic stretching, and that's things like high kicks, scorpions, or Spider-Mans, those different dynamic moves where you're not actually holding the stretch, but you're doing more ballistic type movements, can actually not only not hinder your performance, but may actually improve power when you do those dynamic stretches before. So to answer Ryan's question and to sort of recap, the answer is, do a general warm-up before you work out, especially if it's cold. If you live in a colder climate during the winter time, you do want to raise your body temperature a bit before you actually start the workout. That's a good thing. So whether you like to do some sprinting on the treadmill, walking on the treadmill, some, moving on the stationary bike, the stair climber, hits, Tabatas, what have you, do something to, general movement to increase core body temperature. Then consider following that with some ballistic stuff. So, like I said, high kicks for legs. I'll put some more up on the website in this, and also some static stretching videos as well in the near future on the website. But, if you're doing bench, the old, arm circles, those types of movements, those ballistic types of movements are considered dynamic stretching. And those are good to do like before upper body work. But like I said, if it's a leg day, high kicks, those sorts of things. And I mean, you can find a ton of dynamic stretches online. So look that up. And so that's basically the best way to do a proper warm up. And that'll keep you covered. Then keep the static stretching for the end, which can also serve as not only a way to increase your flexibility, but to also serve as a cool down when the workout's over. Let's see. Next question comes from Jeffrey Diaz. He says, I work out in the mornings, and your nutrition for 6 weeks to shred has the workout shakes and post-workout shake later in the day. Do I just switch them to when I'm working out in the morning and then have my breakfast, or have breakfast and then work out? Thank you. So far, I love the program, and it's my first week. All right, Jeffrey, I actually cover this question quite a bit, even here in the Google Hangouts. I've requested the bodybuilding.com that I, put up examples of different, whether the person works out in the morning, whether they work out in the afternoon, and base the diets around there so that you can actually see a snapshot of how to adjust it. But you can't, and that's because all my programs now do that, because this is the number one question that I get, is how to adapt it for when you work out. So on my website, all my nutrition programs now break down the diet and give you a sample for whether you work out in the morning, whether you work out at your lunch break, whether you work out after school or after work but before dinner, or whether you work out after dinner later at night. That way it's very clear for everyone based on when they train. Now, what you can do, until I can convince bodybuilding.com to change the Shortcut to Shred and Shortcut to Size programs and allow me to add samples for, based on when the person works out. Until then, you can simply go to my JYM website. So just go to jymsupplementscience.com. Click on the supplement facts section. Go to the supplement facts section, and then you're going to see an article called basically how to take basically how to stack all the gym supplements. Click on that, and you'll see that I have a outline of how to compose your diet and your supplement regimen based on when you train. Like I said, that's going to give you a morning sample. It's going to give you if you work out at lunchtime, if you work out after school or work, but before dinner, or if you work out after dinner later at night. And once you see that, you'll be able to take the Shortcut to Shred nutrition plan and piece it together with that sample. It'll make sense once you see that. So do that, and that'll sort of answer your question about how to basically train in the morning. But just to give you the answer right now, you basically get up, you'd have your pre-workout and your pre-workout protein shake, some slow digesting carbs like a piece of fruit, then you go train, then you have your post-workout meal, your protein powder, your fast digesting carbs, your creatine if you're using post-gym is obviously the easiest way to go about that. Then about an hour later, you have your whole food breakfast, and then follow the diet from there. But like I said, it's all explained if you go look up that article on how to stack all my gym supplements at gymsupplementscience.com. Here's one from Joshua Thomas. Joshua's asking, says, love the supplement line. My question is, as you drop weight, should the amount of protein you consume lower as well? Basically, when I was 240 pounds, I was eating about 8 ounces of, say, chicken in a meal. Should I eat less now that I'm 205 pounds? Is there a pro or con either way? Now, the simple answer is yes. You basically, on all my diets, that I break down the macros, the protein, the carbs, and the fat based on relative to your body weight. So if it's protein, it's somewhere around 1.5 grams per pound of body weight. A minimum of 1.5 grams is the best number I find for most people. But let's just say it's 1 gram, just to make the math easier. If you're 240 pounds and you're eating 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, that's 240 grams of protein. If you've dropped down to 200 pounds, then you're only going to be consuming 200 grams of protein. So your options are to either eat less protein per meal or, eat one less protein meal. So, like if you're, usually I recommend shooting for about 40 grams of protein, at least 40 grams of protein per meal. That's going to allow you to get enough leucine from that meal, which is important for boosting muscle protein synthesis. So you don't want to, if you're eating around 40 grams of protein per meal, you don't want to cut it back to eating less than 40 grams per meal, but you would actually just cut out one of those 40 gram protein meals, and that would get you right around the 200 gram mark. But again, like I said, we're using the 1 gram per pound of body weight mark just to make the math easier. But you see my point here is, yes, you're going to drop. And the same thing for carbs and fat as well. I generally recommend, particularly for males, to get 0.5 gram of fat per pound of body weight. So a 200-pound person is going to be eating 100 grams of fat a day. A 240-pound person would be eating 120 grams of fat a day. So you go from 240 down to 200, you're basically dropping fats. Obviously, it's a slow, gradual process, but you're dropping your fat intake by 20 grams of fat. So yes, all those macros and calories as well will be adjusted. So if you were following, let's just say it was 20 calories per pound of body weight at 200 pounds, that's basically 4,000 calories per total per day. So you could see there'd be more if you were eating 220 pounds. So all that drops as your body weight drops. Now, if you're 240 pounds and the next day you're 239 pounds, you don't have to worry about adjusting the extra. That's not going to make a difference. Even if you're down 235 pounds, you can still go by your 240. But once you've down, every time you drop about a 10-pound mark, I would say adjust your macros and your calories, if that makes sense. Here's one. I'll probably butcher your name, and I apologize, but I will remind you that my last name gets butchered all the time, so so don't mind me butchering your name. I know exactly what it feels like. Nayaf Al Naham. Hi Doc, he says, one question after workout. Can I eat any kind of fast carb like candy, frozen yogurt, and this is in donates, but I think you mean donuts, and donuts, knowing I want to lose fat. My height is 178 centimeters. He's about 72 kilograms and about 16 kilograms of body fat. Well, if the DONATES is referring to donuts, no, you really don't want to be consuming donuts as your post-workout meal, because donuts are not only a high carb food, but they're also a high fat food, very high fat. Now, if you work that donut into your macros, let's see the donut was 30 or 40 grams of carbs. That's a fine amount of carbs for post-workout. And typically donuts use use flour, and flour is basically glucose. It's going to be, it's a starch. So that's a good carb source for post-workout. But you may be getting 20 grams of fat from that one donut. Now, if you're 200 pounds and you're eating half a gram of fat per pound of body weight, like I recommend, and you want to work that donut into your diet and have it post-workout, that's a good time to have it. But you got to make sure that those 20 grams of fat are calculated into your daily totals for what you're allowed. So if you're 200 pounds and you're eating 100 grams of fat a day, that 20 grams of fat means you only have 80 grams of fat left to consume in the day. So, but typically I recommend going for sugary candy, things that are either no fat or low fat, things like pixie sticks, sweet tarts, gummy bears. Those are, foods that have a high GI, glycemic index, are basically fast digesting because of the type of sugar they are, with a high amount of dextrose in there, or glucose. And remember, corn syrup, when you see the word corn syrup in candy, that's not a bad word. It's not high fructose corn syrup. So let's be clear here. A lot of people get confused when they read a gummy bear packet that has corn syrup and they say, you recommend eating gummy bears, but it has corn syrup in that. Isn't corn syrup bad? No, corn syrup is simply glucose. It's a starch. It's branched glucose molecules, and that's the main carb from corn syrup. Corn syrup is much different than high fructose corn syrup. High fructose corn syrup has fructose added to it to increase the fructose amount, because fructose is actually sweeter than glucose. And we want to, I wouldn't worry your day away worrying about how much fructose you consume post-workout, but generally speaking, fructose is not ideal post-workout because it's a low glycemic. It's a fast digesting because it's a sugar, but it doesn't go directly to the muscles and fuel them the way glucose does. When we eat dextrose is the same thing as glucose. Glucose is what your blood sugar is made of. Glucose is our main carb source in the body, what we burn for fuel in the form of carbs. Most carbs need to be converted into glucose, and fructose is one of those carbs that needs to get converted into glucose for the body to use it. So because fructose has to get converted into glucose before it can be used, it is a low glycemic carb and is not the ideal carb to consume post-workout, which is why I recommend things that have like corn syrup and dextrose, because you're getting that pure dextrose or glucose, which essentially doesn't even need to be digested, really. I mean, it just is almost immediately absorbed into the bloodstream, goes to the muscles and replenishes glycogen levels. And you can debate on the post-workout window all you want. You can bring me all kinds of data, but what I see in the gym over decades of doing this is that when you give athletes, hard training athletes, you know, I'll try not to go off on too many rants here and get off subject here. But you know, there are these scientists claiming that the post-workout window is not as critical as we used to think it is. And I say bullshit. Sorry for my French, but bullshit. In fact, you look at most of these scientists that recommend that they don't have an ounce of muscle on them, their bodies. You know, perhaps if you guys actually tried getting some fast digesting carbs post-workout, you might have a little more muscle mass and lean muscle mass at that. So I always laugh when it's these skinny, doughy researchers claiming, oh, you don't need to take post-workout glucose. You just eat anytime you want. Okay, sure, it seems to be working well for you. But seriously, working with the thousands of athletes that I've worked with over decades of doing this in both the lab and actually the real world in the gym, you would be stupid to not consume a fast digesting carb post workout. It's the ideal way to recover. You could look at the reviews just on the post gym when people use both the post gym active matrix and the dextrose packet. They immediately feel better. And when you do my workouts, at the end of that workout, you are spent. You are destroyed if you do most of my workouts properly. When you take post-gym along with the post-gym dextrose, you feel far better than if you skipped that dextrose after the, I mean, you immediately feel it. And the results speak for themselves. So I'm about results. You can, you know, data is fine. I'm a research scientist. You know, before I was doing this, I was a research scientist at Yale School of Medicine. So I know a thing or two about research and what goes on with research and the flaws that are in research. Putting someone on some half-ass workout and then recording their glycogen levels and seeing how well they perform and grow after doing half-ass workouts with or without carbs doesn't tell me anything. Okay, I'm sorry, because those aren't the kind of workouts I use, these half-ass workouts. So use all that data with these weak workouts that don't tell us anything and then try to make a conclusion based on hard training athletes. Go ahead, keep doing it. I'm going to be laughing over here because we're all seeing results when we do it this way. So remember, sorry to, like I said, sorry to go off on a rant, but this is one of those hot topics now because all these researchers are trying to claim that you don't need to follow post-workout window. It's not as critical. Okay, well, why don't you guys see results? Because I'm seeing results. Personally, my clients that I work with one-on-one are seeing results, and the people in the gym army and those who follow my programs, literally millions of people have done shortcut the size and shortcut the shred alone. And you know, I've got hundreds more programs out there. So the results that I'm seeing that people are getting when they follow those nutrition guidelines to get a fast digesting post-workout meal in millions of people are showing results like those people have never seen before. Show me all the data you want. I want to see results. That's what I'm interested in. So sorry to go off on that tangent, but it really irks me when these experts are out there trying to claim that, oh, the data in the lab, you know, that's great. That's fine. It's science, but it doesn't tell us anything about people like us and the way we train and the way we live. Okay, because we're seeing these results when we do this, and that's what I care about. That's science. That is science. That's real world science right there. So like I said, I generally recommend those fast digesting low fat carbs, and you know, like I said, Corn syrup is fine. Remember, it's not the same as high fructose corn syrup. But if you want something that has higher in fat, maybe it's a Twinkie. Seriously, maybe it's a Twinkie. You love Twinkies? Have it for your post-workout. But make sure that the fat from the Twinkie is added to your daily totals. That's completely fine. So I hope that answered your question about what kinds of candy you can consume. Or like I said, just drink down dextrose. That's why the dextrose that I have for post-gym is to make it convenient. However, if you are dieting and you're in the later stages of a diet and you are only really consuming carbs with your post-workout meal, I would not waste my one carb meal on a dextrose drink. If that's what you like, that's great. I mean, it's delicious. It goes well with post-gym. But if this is your only time to get in some carbs in the day, make it enjoyable. Gummy bears. Maybe it's a Pop-Tart. Like I said, you can even have a Twinkie as long as you make sure it fits the rest of your macros. Even when you're dieting and very close to a show, unless you're at the stage where you've actually had to drop carbs so low that you're no longer consuming post-workout carbs. Now, I'm going to continue going off on a tangent here, and I apologize before I do so. I want to talk to you guys, as we're talking about post-workout carbs, about the other debate, and that is post-workout carbs for muscle growth. Are post-workout carbs essential for muscle growth? What the research shows is that for stimulating protein synthesis, no, carbs are not essential. That doesn't mean that they're not essential for muscle growth. Protein synthesis is not the only thing that's important for muscle growth. So as long as you consume enough protein post-workout, and I would make sure to get a good 40 grams of a protein blend, particularly Pro-Gym. So that's, about 2 scoops of Pro-Gym. Along, I'd also get some branched chain amino acids, which is why I have 6 grams in post-gym, to make sure you truly spike protein synthesis. Is the 30 grams of dextrose from post-gym going to further enhance the insulin spike and or I should say, let's not say insulin spike, because yes, it will further enhance the insulin spike, but will it further promote protein synthesis? No, it won't. As long as you're getting enough protein with ample leucine, you will maximize muscle protein synthesis. But that's not why getting carbs is important post-workout. Getting carbs in post-workout is about glycogen replenishment, and we know hands down that getting in fast digesting carbs immediately after you work out is the fastest, best way to recover muscle glycogen. Now, people will debate and say, well, if you look at the research, even if you eat later on in the day, you still eventually replenish your glycogen stores. But what's the point of, why delay glycogen replenishment? You will feel better, you'll recover faster, and like I said, you will get better results. Why would you purposely skip carbs when they're only going to enhance your recovery? Because, oh well, I'll still replenish if I eat my carbs later in the day. It's just idiotic to me to not maximize your recovery immediately after you train. Like I said, but the restoring glycogen is not, taking your post-workout fast carbs is not going to promote protein synthesis any more than if you skip the carbs and just had a protein shake along with branched chain amino acids. But that's not saying that the carbs are not important for muscle growth. Why are the carbs important for muscle growth? Well, they are going to further spike an insulin response. In creatine, which you should be taking post-workout, creatine relies on insulin for entry into the muscle cells. So if you want to maximize the results you're getting from creatine, you damn well better get carbs in with that protein shake. Carnitine is another critical post-workout supplement, and another supplement that relies on an insulin spike. If you don't have an insulin spike, it's not going to do anything when you consume it. So those two supplements, which you should be consuming post-workout if you really are serious about getting results, you should be consuming a fast digesting, high glycemic index carb source immediately post-workout, along with your protein shake, along with that creatine, along with that carnitine. Okay? The other reason is the glycogen replenishment. Why am I so adamant about replenishing it fast and not waiting the rest of the day? Because glycogen pulls water into the muscle. Now, that's going to make the muscles fuller. At least that's, sort of a transient thing. You get a nice muscle pump. It helps to keep that pump in fullness longer. But there's also some data to suggest, some evidence to suggest that when a muscle is fuller like that, when more water is pulled into the muscle cells, it places a stretch on the membrane of the muscle. That stretch instigates processes that lead to greater muscle protein synthesis, greater muscle growth, because there's a stretch on the muscle. It needs more room. So replenishing that muscle glycogen immediately after is going to help immediately draw more water into the muscle fiber, give you that fullness and start that stretch, and could further enhance muscle growth. So these are the reasons. These are the reasons that these experts out there who these are the things that they're missing when they claim that you don't need to take carbs post-workout. They're missing all those critical components to muscle growth. And like I said, if you look at the majority of these experts, and again, I'm not saying that you have to be, you have to be a walking mountain of muscle to know anything about training and nutrition. But if you are so knowledgeable, why aren't you doing it on your own body is my question. Show me that it works on your own body. If that's what you're saying, why would you not? And if there's an expert out there who has 13-inch arms and is telling me how to eat and train for muscle growth, well, I'm sorry, I could care less about your credentials, because it certainly isn't working for you. And that goes, a long way. Like that's my stand. Obviously, the academic background is critical, but if you can't actually make your own advice work for your own body, why would anyone take you seriously? That's just one of my sort of little takes on these debates, on these topics that I know in the real world are working, yet these other experts are trying to claim that they don't work. So again, sorry to just go on and on about the post-workout window, but when you actually have all the information in front of you and not just look at it from a muscle protein synthesis or how long it takes for glycogen levels to replenish, and that they're still going to replenish. Once you look at all those different factors, and if you consider all those that I mentioned, and you're still saying, oh, well, forget the carbs, it's, that's the reason your results are not going to be as impressive as other people. It's really that simple. And why not enjoy yourself post-workout with some delicious high glycemic carbs that aren't going to do you any harm healthfully or physique-wise, but only enhance your results? Why would you give that up? It's quite silly to me, but who knows? Anyway, let's see. Here's one from Dehan Razik. Says, do you recommend taking branched chain amino acids during the day? If you do, then which branched chain amino acid supplement would you recommend next to gym supplements? And he's from Bosnia. Well, welcome all the way from Bosnia. I know people all around the world are watching the Google chat. Met many of you at FIBO when I was in Cologne, Germany, not that long ago. It seems like just yesterday I was there. Now here in Los Angeles. So welcome to all you guys, and thank you for tuning in all over the world. Branched chain amino acids. So my pre and post gym provides 6 grams of branched chain amino acids. So you're getting 6 grams before you work out, 6 grams after you work out. The most critical time to get your branched chain amino acids in there. Before workout, they're going to help with energy, decrease fatigue, allow you to train harder. After workout, they're going to help with recovery and muscle growth. Most critical time to get them. But should you be taking them at other times of day? That depends on your diet. Like I said, before when I was talking about protein amounts and adjusting it for your body weight, that I usually recommend getting about 40 grams of protein per meal, because that'll provide at least 3 grams of leucine, which we find to be the minimal dose to boost, to really give a maximal spike in muscle protein synthesis, which is what you want when you consume most of your meals, depending on your meal frequency, of course. So if a meal is not going to, except for, pre-workout, which you do consume extra, I would recommend about 20 grams, somewhere 20 to 25 grams of protein before you work out, along with branched chain amino acids, so that you're getting adequate leucine amounts. But again, if you've watched some of my videos and listened to my discussions on branched chain amino acids and leucine before workout, it's really not about muscle growth before you work out when you take it. It's really about energy and decreasing fatigue. But the meals like breakfast, lunch, if you have a snack in the middle of the day, what have you, you should be shooting for 40 grams of protein to make sure you're getting adequate amounts of leucine to take those amino acids from that protein and drive them into muscle cells by producing more muscle protein. So do you need branched chain amino acids at other times of the day besides before and after workout? Not really, as long as you're consuming enough protein with each meal. If you're having a snack, say, in the middle of the day, and it's only 20 grams of protein, then yeah, you probably want to have a branched chain amino acid at that time with your meal. That way it's going to provide the leucine that you need. But also, don't just take pure leucine. Research shows that when you have leucine along with the other 2 branched chain amino acids, isoleucine and valine, at a 2-to-1, somewhere right around the 2-to-1 ratio, you can go as high as I get in post-gym, where I have 3-to-1 to 1, with leucine being just a little bit higher. That's really pushing it as far as you can, that 3-to-1 ratio. So somewhere in the 2-to-1 to 1 to 3-to-1 to 1 range is right where you want to be, because you want those other amino acids. They're also critical, not only for energy, but also critical for supporting muscle protein synthesis and muscle growth. And that's what the research shows. Far better results when you consume all 3 branched chain amino acids in that proper ratio than when you consume leucine alone. So what would be a good branched chain amino acid? Bodybuilding.com branched chain amino acids are fine if that's what you're finding that you need. I personally don't consume branched chains, although I do drink, I'll drink pre-gym as an energy drink just throughout the day. So I may be getting some branched chains in there, but it's not really because I want the branched chains. It's more as a sort of energy drink that I can trust and works very well to keep me alert and focused throughout the day. So you could use, if that's what you want to do, you could use pre-gym, or if you don't want the caffeine, you could use post-gym as well. And then not only do you get the branched chains, but you get some extra carnitine, you get extra glutamine, what have you, with those meals. So that's your other option. But if you want to do like a straight up branched chain amino acid supplement, you can go with bodybuilding.com, their brands as well. It's just a straight up branched chain amino acid. It's a 2-to-1 ratio. About a 5-gram dose should do if you're, like I said, but you really only need it when your meal is lower than 40 grams of protein. Even 35 grams would suit most people. So that's why I really don't recommend, or at least I'm not saying I don't recommend. You certainly could take brand. You can sip on them. You can consume them with every meal, even when the meal's 40, 50 grams of protein if you want, just to make sure you're getting adequate leucine, adequate branched chain amino acids. Not that it's necessarily going to provide a true benefit, but there's nothing wrong with doing that. I'm just saying I don't see a point in consuming them and spending your money on them. I can get all the branched chain amino acids I want for a very cheap price, but I don't use branched chains throughout the day. I just make sure that my meals, each meal that I consume, has adequate amounts of animal protein, so that I am getting adequate amounts of leucine as well as the other amino acids. Let's see, we got about 15 minutes or so left, almost 20. Here's one from Joel Soria. It says, I've worked with a couple of trainers. Some say one cheat meal is okay, and others say no cheat meals. So what's the right thing? And if so, what is considered moderate? And is there any foods to still stay away from? Not sure where to post this question, so I'll try here. Yeah, that's the exact spot to post it, Joel. So cheat meals, cheat meals really are going to depend on your diet. For those of you who are listening to my post-workout rants on carbs, I said you could, if you want to make your post-workout carb a donut, even though it's providing you 20 grams of fat, just make sure that fat works in with your macros for the day. So would that be a cheat meal? Not really, because it fits your macros for the day. When we really talk about cheat meals, we're talking about something that's not going to really fit your macros. So cheat meals. Sorry, my throat's a little dry and can't deny getting in some extra Pregent. Like I said, it's my energy drink for the day, along with my pre-workout. Now, cheat meals. So, like I said, it really depends on your diet. For those who are following my diets into the later stages as carbs continue dropping and you're getting to a 0.5 gram per pound of body weight of carbs or less, on one day a week, you will have a high carb day, which helps keep your metabolic rate up. It keeps your leptin levels optimal and keeps your metabolic rate going, which can help to further delay the plateau that most people see as they diet. Once you diet, once you drop calories and carbs, eventually your body adapts to that, and the weight loss, the fat loss slows or even just completely stalls. And having a high carb day once a week sort of helps to trick your body into not thinking it's continually just starving and adjusting. It prevents it from adjusting at the rate it normally would adjust at. So that high carb day, you could consider that like a cheat day, if you will, although if you do it properly, the goal isn't to eat a lot of high fat carbs. The goal is to eat a lot of low fat carbs. So, however, since you are on a low carb diet, having jelly beans and big bowls of pasta and rice and air pop popcorn is technically cheat meals for your low carb diet, but because this is a high carb day, it's not really a cheat meal. So there's no, I guess what I'm trying to get at is there's no real right answer. And, depending on your diet, if you can work in those foods, in your macros, whether it's the donut or like, gummy bears, people who get on a, low carb diet, but are allowed to have gummy bears post workout, it makes the world of difference for them because they're getting this treat that's not a cheat meal. But it's gummy bears, or it's pixie sticks, or it's a Pop Tart, or it's bread with jelly, maybe white bread and jelly, or it's sorbet, whatever you want to have post workout for your fast digesting carbs, or if it's even a high carb, higher fat meal, food like a donut. It's not really a cheat meal because it's fitting into as long as it's fitting into your macros. It makes a world of a difference for someone who's dieting, and they find that that one meal saves them, completely saves them from even craving a cheat meal. It makes a huge difference in going, and I mean, like, when I talk about a cheat meal, I mean really going off the diet and just, eating half a pizza and a pitcher of beer and, ice cream, and, you name it, onion rings and French fries. So, cheat meals are, like I said, it depends on how you define them. It depends on the diet. There's really no right or wrong answer. Any, nutritionist or expert that says you should never have a cheat meal, I'd question any of their knowledge. And anyone who says you have to have a cheat meal, I would also question their knowledge. I'm a firm believer in enjoying yourself and being realistic about people's abilities to diet, if you will, to refrain from enjoying things that they normally consume. So I'm really big on finding ways that they can enjoy them. I said post-workout. For those who are low carb and they're craving sugary or carb foods, maybe it's cereal, have that post-workout. It works with your diet. Even though you're low carb, you can enjoy that food. Makes a world of a difference. If it's a donut, try to fit that in. If it's pizza, try to fit that in. But it's not eating an entire pizza every single day. It's working that in. So if you're able to do that and work those foods in, and again, I'm not talking about getting up and having McDonald's hash brown and egg McMuffin for breakfast, and then going to Burger King and having a Whopper with French fries for lunch. That's not that blows your diet, right? You're right there. If you're telling me that you're following, those are fitting in your macros are messed up, because there's no way you're going to see results from those kind of macros if you can do that. What I'm talking about is fitting in some foods, moderate amounts. Like I said, one donut post-workout. Maybe it's a slice of pizza with your lunch. Like a cheese pizza. If you look at a slice of cheese pizza, go to, like a nice, if you like New York style pizza, would have you nice, fairly big, it's thin crust. You have that with a protein shake, maybe a salad for your micronutrients, phytonutrients from vegetables and greens. And you can work that into your diet, and that's going to save you from craving that pizza if you just never allowed yourself to have it. So there's ways to work foods in. And again, I know this is going off on a tangent here, but like I said, cheat meal is really how you define it, and how you define it is based on your diet. If you can fit those into your macros, it's not a cheat meal. However, if you're not allowing yourself any of those foods during the week, rewarding yourself with a no holds barred cheat meal once a week. And I'm talking about picking out the entire day from the moment you wake up till the time you go to bed, but one meal where you don't think and you just eat what you would want to eat. Again, you're not going to eat 3 pizzas, a meatball hoagie, you know, 2 pitchers of beer, a quart of ice cream, you know, a bag of potato, you know, that gets a little off the rails. But, you know, going out to dinner, having, you know, whether it's a pizza, whether it's a, you know, chicken parmesan with fettuccine alfredo, and some wine and a cannoli or ice cream, that's reasonable. And that's going to be a reward. And a lot of times when people are dieting very strict throughout the week, having that reward at the end of the week gives them something to look forward to and keeps them true to their diet. And they monitor themselves because they want to feel like they have earned that reward. And then once you get that reward, you feel satisfied, you feel like you got your reward. Now you're ready to go another week. In fact, a lot of times that meal makes them feel sick and they're like, oh my God, I don't want to see any more ice cream because I'm so sick from it. And now they're like happy to go back to following their diet. And then later in the week, they start going, oh, okay, now I'm ready for my reward meal. So, however, if you're fitting in those foods during the week, then you really will find that you don't need to have a cheat meal. So, like I said, there's really no like yes, no answer because it's really so dependent on the individual, on the diet, on how they're doing the diet and whatnot. So, I hope that sort of made some sense. And also, like I said, beware of anybody who tells you never do this, never have a cheat meal. That's what I call food Nazis. Those are the people who look at you when you're eating gummy bears and go, well, what are you doing? That's sugar. Yeah, exactly. I'm recovering from my workout. Or the people who say, here's a low-carb pumpkin pie recipe for Thanksgiving. No, it's Thanksgiving. Enjoy yourself. Don't be a food Nazi on Thanksgiving and skip eating real pumpkin pie. It's one day yourself. Anyway, so we've got about 5 minutes left. Here's one from Justin Blake. He says, I know you have mentioned that you have back injury pain as well. I'm following your beginner to advanced lifter program as recommended. My question is, what do you recommend pre and post workout for stretching, warm up, cool down as to help mitigate pain or prevent further future injury? Are there any additional exercises for gaining back flexibility overall through the back and hips? Well, Justin, I heard that in the warm up. The topic that I talked about from the beginning, early on during this Google Hangout Q&A, and that is, do a general warm up, do some dynamic stretches, and then save the static stretching. In this case, you'd be focusing on the hamstrings, back. And if you go online and look up, nice thing about the web is that you can look up all these different stretches on how to do, like a typical sit and reach, a lower back stretch, stretches for your hip flexors. You'll find those all, incorporate those in at the end of your workout when your body is already warm. It's a great way to cool down, great way to regain your flexibility. And if your back injury is a soft tissue issue, then likely it will definitely help reduce the pain. My issue is a structural one. I have a compression fracture of my lumbar, one of my lumbar vertebrae is pretty much crushed. There's little I can do, but I do try to maintain my flexibility in my movement. And, to get off the question, but staying the topic of flexibility, as we 7 years old now, do not feel it at all. I do not feel my age. I have as much energy as I've always had, as much drive to train, and as much fun when I train as I've always had, which goes to, really show you the true benefits of living a fitness lifestyle. But as we age, it's really critical to your mobility, and stretching is going to be critical as you get older. You see it happen as you watch a baby. Baby can go down into a full squat, their butt almost touching the floor without even thinking about it. As we get older, the ability to go even just get down and sit on the floor with a baby gets to be a challenge. Well, why is that? Well, it's because we've been so inactive, and the range of motion that we have in those joints and those muscle fibers has decreased over time with muscle weakness and lack of flexibility. So as we get older, it's critical to not only maintain our muscle strength and our endurance and our heart health, but also our mobility. And to maintain mobility, you need to maintain your flexibility. So as you get older, it's really important to add some type of flexibility training into your routine. Oh, that's another great option. I'd still recommend trying to do some stretching, static stretching at the end of your workouts as a good cool down and to maintain flexibility, but then also adding yoga in as well, which is going to really help you to maintain that mobility as you get older. And I'm not talking about waiting around till you're 50 or 60 or even 47 like I am. I'm talking about realizing it now. Realizing it as you're getting into your late 20s and early 30s that you need to start a plan for your body and yourself and your health, your mental health, and your sanity now. You don't want to wait too long because then it's going to be too late. I know it's never too late to, catch up, but if it's far better to just maintain it as you age than to try to make up for the lost time. So now is the time for those of you who aren't yet my age to really consider seriously adding stretch here or there. I mean, to really make it an effort to include flexibility in your